Never trust someone who shows you their true colors the night before your wedding. Alex learned this lesson the hardest way possible, and what happened next will shock you to your core. Picture this. You're 24 hours away from what should be the happiest day of your life. The flowers are arranged, the cake is ready, your suit is pressed and hanging in the closet. Everything seems perfect except for one tiny detail that keeps nagging at you. Lucy's dog, Brutus, a massive German shepherd with piercing amber eyes, has been acting strange around you for weeks. Every time you walk into a room, his ears flatten against his head, his lips curl back to show his teeth, and a low growl rumbles from deep in his chest. Lucy always laughs it off, saying Brutus just needs time to warm up to you, but something in your gut tells you there's more to it. Alex had been dating Lucy for 2 years, and during that entire time, he tried everything to win over her beloved pet. He brought expensive treats, took Brutus on long walks in the park, even slept on the floor next to the dog's bed hoping to build some kind of bond. But nothing worked. If anything, Brutus seemed to dislike him more with each passing day. Friends told Alex he was being paranoid, that some dogs just take longer to accept new people in their owner's life. His own mother had laughed when he mentioned his concerns, telling him that once he and Lucy were married and living together, the dog would have no choice but to accept him as part of the family. But Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Brutus saw something he didn't. Dogs have this incredible ability to sense things humans miss. They can smell fear, detect lies, and pick up on emotions that people try to hide. Every time Lucy kissed Alex or held his hand, Brutus would position himself between them, as if he was trying to protect his owner from some invisible threat. When Alex stayed over at Lucy's apartment, the dog would pace back and forth outside the bedroom door, whining and scratching at the wood until Lucy finally let him in to sleep at the foot of the bed. The wedding preparations had been a whirlwind of activity. Lucy had insisted on having the biggest, most expensive celebration possible. She wanted a venue that could hold 300 guests, a 7-course dinner with premium wine pairings, and a live band that cost more than most people's cars. Alex didn't mind spending the money because he loved Lucy and wanted to give her the wedding of her dreams. He came from a wealthy family and had access to trust funds that most people could only imagine. His grandfather had built a business empire that spanned multiple industries, and Alex stood to inherit a significant portion of that wealth when he turned 30. Lucy knew about his family's money, of course. It wasn't something Alex could hide, given the lifestyle he lived and the circles they moved in. She'd met his parents at charity galas and country club events, had been to the family estate for holidays and special occasions. But Alex always hoped that Lucy loved him for who he was as a person, not for what his bank account could provide. She seemed genuinely interested in his thoughts and opinions, laughed at his jokes even when they weren't particularly funny, and made him feel like the most important person in the world when they were together. The night before the wedding, Alex decided to surprise Lucy with a late dinner at their favorite restaurant. He'd been staying at his parents' house for the past week, following the old tradition that the bride and groom shouldn't see each other before the ceremony. But he missed her desperately and thought a romantic evening would be the perfect way to calm his pre-wedding nerves. He drove to her apartment with a bouquet of white roses and a bottle of champagne, planning to sweep her off her feet one last time before they became husband and wife. When he arrived at Lucy's building, he noticed her lights were on and could hear voices coming from inside. He used his key to let himself in, thinking he'd surprise her and whoever was visiting. But as he climbed the stairs to her floor, the voices became clearer, and what he heard made his blood run cold. Lucy was talking to someone on the phone, and her voice had a tone he'd never heard before. It was cold, calculating, and completely devoid of the warmth she always showed him. Alex paused outside her door, his hand frozen on the doorknob as Lucy's words sank in. She was discussing their wedding, but not in the way a bride should be talking about the happiest day of her life. Instead, she was treating it like a business transaction, a means to an end that had nothing to do with love or commitment. The person on the other end of the phone seemed to be asking her questions about their future together, and Lucy's responses were like daggers to Alex's heart. She talked about how she'd only have to stay married to Alex for a year or two before filing for divorce. She mentioned the prenup they'd signed, and how her lawyer had found several loopholes that would ensure she'd walk away with a substantial settlement. Most devastating of all, she talked about another man, someone she claimed to really love, someone she'd been seeing behind Alex's back for months. The wedding to Alex was just a stepping stone, a way to secure financial stability while she figured out how to be with the person she actually wanted. Alex stood in that hallway for what felt like hours, listening to the woman he thought he knew destroy every belief he'd held about their relationship. She laughed as she described how easy it had been to fool him, how his trusting nature and generous spirit had made him the perfect target. She talked about specific moments they'd shared together, private conversations and intimate gestures that she'd apparently found amusing rather than meaningful. Every "I love you" had been a lie. Every kiss had been part of an elaborate performance designed to secure her future at his expense. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal itself, but the casual cruelty in her voice as she discussed it. She wasn't conflicted or guilty about what she was doing. She wasn't struggling with the decision or feeling bad about hurting someone who cared about her. She was simply executing a plan she'd probably had from the very beginning, treating Alex like a business opportunity rather than a human being with real feelings and emotions. Brutus had been right all along. The dog had sensed Lucy's deception in ways that Alex's human instincts had missed. All those months of growling and positioning himself protectively weren't signs of a jealous or difficult pet. They were warnings from an animal who could smell the lies and deception that surrounded his owner's relationship with this man. Brutus had been trying to protect Alex from the very beginning, and Alex had been too blinded by what he thought was love to pay attention. Standing there outside Lucy's apartment, bouquet wilting in his hands and champagne growing warm, Alex felt his entire world crumble around him. Tomorrow, he was supposed to stand in front of 300 guests and promise to love, honor, and cherish a woman who saw him as nothing more than a paycheck. His parents, his friends, his extended family, everyone who mattered to him would be there to witness what they thought was a celebration of true love. Instead, they'd be watching him make the biggest mistake of his life, binding himself legally and emotionally to someone who had already planned his destruction. The smart thing would have been to cancel the wedding immediately, to confront Lucy, and call off the entire elaborate charade before it could go any further. But Alex found himself paralyzed by the sheer magnitude of what canceling would mean. The venue was booked, the catering was paid for, guests had traveled from around the world to be there. His parents had spent months planning parties and events surrounding the wedding weekend. Canceling now would mean admitting to everyone that he'd been fooled, that the woman he'd chosen to spend his life with had played him for a complete fool. More than that, Alex realized he was trapped by his own disbelief. Part of him kept hoping that what he'd heard was somehow a misunderstanding, that there was an explanation that would make sense of Lucy's words without destroying everything he thought he knew about their relationship. Maybe she was just venting frustrations to a friend, or maybe she was discussing a hypothetical scenario rather than actual plans. The rational part of his mind knew better, but his heart wasn't ready to accept the complete destruction of his future. As he finally turned the key and entered Lucy's apartment, Alex made a decision that would change everything. He wouldn't confront her tonight, wouldn't give her a chance to explain or lie her way out of what he'd heard. Instead, he would gather evidence, make sure he had proof of her deception that couldn't be denied or explained away. If Lucy wanted to play games with his life and his heart, then Alex would make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of person she really was. Alex walked into Lucy's apartment that night with a smile plastered on his face, acting like nothing had changed. He handed her the roses, popped open the champagne, and listened to her excited chatter about the wedding as if his heart wasn't breaking into a million pieces. Every word she spoke felt like another knife twisting in his chest, but he kept his composure, nodding and smiling at all the right moments. Lucy seemed completely oblivious to his internal turmoil, chattering away about how perfect everything was going to be and how she couldn't wait to be his wife. What Lucy didn't know was that Alex had his phone recording in his pocket. Every loving word she spoke to his face, every kiss she gave him, every promise about their future together was being captured alongside the cruel conversation he'd overheard in the hallway. He was building a case against her, collecting evidence that would expose her true nature to everyone who mattered. It was a calculated move that went against every instinct he had as someone who'd always believed in direct confrontation and honest communication. The next morning arrived with all the fanfare and excitement that a wedding day should bring. Alex's groomsmen showed up at his parents' house early, joking and laughing as they helped him get ready. His best man, Marcus, had known him since college and kept commenting on how lucky Alex was to have found someone like Lucy. His younger brother Jake was serving as an usher and couldn't stop talking about how beautiful Lucy had looked at the rehearsal dinner. Everyone was in such high spirits, so genuinely happy for what they thought was a love match made in heaven. Alex's mother fussed over his appearance, adjusting his tie and smoothing down his hair while tears of joy gathered in her eyes. She'd always dreamed of this day, of seeing her eldest son marry a woman who would love and support him for the rest of his life. She talked about how proud his late grandfather would have been, how the family legacy would continue through Alex and Lucy's future children. Every word was another reminder of what Alex was about to lose, not just his relationship with Lucy, but his family's faith in his judgment and their excitement about his future. The ceremony venue was decorated exactly as Lucy had wanted it. White roses and baby's breath covered every available surface, creating an atmosphere of pure romantic elegance. The guest list read like a who's who of society figures, business leaders, and family friends who'd travel from across the country to witness this union. Alex's father had spared no expense in making sure everything was perfect, from the imported flowers to the world-class musicians who would provide the soundtrack for what everyone believed would be the most important day of his son's life. As Alex stood at the altar waiting for Lucy to walk down the aisle, he felt like he was watching his own execution. The officiant, a family friend who'd known Alex since he was a child, smiled warmly and made small talk about how nervous all grooms get on their wedding day. The photographer moved around discreetly, capturing what he thought were candid moments of pre-ceremony excitement. Alex's groomsmen stood behind him, proudly wearing their matching tuxedos and genuinely believing they were supporting their friend on the happiest day of his life. When the music started and the doors opened to reveal Lucy in her elaborate white gown, the entire congregation rose to their feet in admiration. She looked absolutely stunning, like something out of a fairy tale, with her dress flowing behind her and a radiant smile on her face. Alex's mother dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, overcome with emotion at seeing her future daughter-in-law looking so beautiful. Lucy's own parents beamed with pride as they walked her down the aisle, clearly thrilled that their daughter had secured such an advantageous marriage. But as Lucy approached the altar, Alex noticed something that no one else seemed to see. Her smile was perfect, practiced, the same expression she probably wore when closing business deals or charming potential clients. Her eyes were bright and excited, but not with love or joy at marrying him. Instead, she looked like someone who was about to win a prize she'd been working toward for years. She was playing her role flawlessly, giving everyone exactly the performance they expected to see from a blushing bride on her wedding day. The officiant began the ceremony with traditional words about love, commitment, and the sacred bond between husband and wife. He spoke about the importance of trust, honesty, and putting your partner's needs above your own. Every word was like salt in Alex's wounds, a reminder of everything this marriage was supposed to represent and everything it actually meant to the woman standing beside him. Lucy nodded along appropriately, even shedding a tear at one point when the officiant mentioned the challenges that all couples face and how true love helps them overcome any obstacle. When it came time for the vows, Lucy delivered hers with Emmy-worthy performance skills. She talked about how Alex had changed her life, how he'd shown her what real love could be, and how she couldn't imagine spending her future with anyone else. She promised to stand by him through good times and bad, to support his dreams and ambitions, and to love him more with each passing day. The congregation sighed collectively at her beautiful words, and Alex's mother actually started crying openly at the romance of it all. Then it was Alex's turn to speak, and this was the moment he'd been both dreading and anticipating since the night before. Instead of delivering the heartfelt vows he'd spent weeks writing, Alex pulled out his phone and connected it to the venue's sound system. The confused murmur that rippled through the crowd grew louder as he explained that he had something important he wanted everyone to hear before they continued with the ceremony. The recording started playing, and Lucy's voice filled the elegant space with crystal clarity. At first, people seemed confused about what they were hearing. But as her words became clear, as she talked about using Alex for his money and planning to divorce him to be with another man, the atmosphere in the room changed completely. Gasps of shock and disbelief echoed off the walls as 300 guests realized they were witnessing the complete destruction of what they thought was a perfect romance. Lucy's face went through a series of expressions that Alex would remember for the